Read a book where you don't have to consult a dictionary for every second word which has been put in. That's how I write. And that's how I used to write my middles. And people would say it's written in very simple English, but written very well. So I think that is a compliment. I mean, there was a sentence which is, I think, at the back of the book also: man's ego is the fountainhead of all human progress. Yes. According to me, that was sort of my Bible. I wanted to say sometimes I have started with a story and I want to end it in one way, and halfway through the story has a life of its own and it turns somewhere else and it ends differently. And I'm wondering, but this is not what I wanted to write. So what happened? I don't know. It's the process of writing, and then the story has a life of its own. Paternity cases in India. Yes. And it is terrible, and that is why many women go in for a divorce afterwards. If the husband insists on a paternity test for the child, then she says, okay, fine, it's proven that you are the father. Now I don't want to have anything to do with it. I think, and I have very, very strong views about, this treating somebody as a child. I think anybody above 14, if they've committed a crime, should be treated as an adult.
Hello, book nerds. Welcome to the Booknerds Podcast. The year is ending, 2025 is ending, and it is ending on a high note for me because I picked up this book called Swansong by Vandana Jena. And quite a, serendipity and coincidence that it's called Swansong and the year is ending. It's a collection of short stories. It is The stories are quite eclectic, I must say. They have a lot of twists, which is always good with short stories. There are around 24, I think, and they don't disappoint you. They have a lot of masala. At the same time, they get very serious sometimes and a lot of fun at times. So it is a great blend to perhaps, especially for the non-readers, it's a great book to start off with, your reading journey. So I would recommend this book, especially all the Indian readers out there. They would totally understand, relate, and enjoy the stories. I got a chance to talk to the author herself, and we had a deep dive into the stories, some of the stories, and had a conversation around the short story art form in general as well. So yeah, check out the podcast and let me know in the comments whether you liked it or not. And do pick up this book from Amazon. It's called Swansong. And go on. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube, where we are at the handle Booknerds. So yeah, thank you so much. Go watch the podcast now. Okay, guys, let's kick off things. And it's the Booknerds Podcast, and I'm so happy to report it's Christmas time, so I'm looking kind of Christmassy. When you watch this podcast or listen to this, it must be around, say, Christmas or something. But I'm in a very happy mood. I have read a short story collection. It's called Swansong, and the cover is quite enchanting, I must say. Even the back cover is quite... I loved it. Great job, Rupa Publications, I must say. And the author is with us, Vandana Jena. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here and talking to us about this new short story collection. Although I must say you are a pro at these. You have been writing these for a while. I've already mentioned all that in the introduction, so we need not kind of, delve into that. But you have honed this art of short story writing. I'm so happy.
Thank you.
And loved this one as well. I have read One Rotten Apple back in the day, so I don't remember them exactly, but I know how you write. So I knew what I was getting into. So it was that experience, and even better in some ways, which I'm going to talk about. Some places I was a bit disappointed as well, but I will talk about that later. पहले तो सारी अच्छी खबरें जो है. Let's talk about this story and the overall theme. It's already mentioned in the blurb that it's a book of reckonings, which kind of sets the bar for the reader. And what did you guys want to convey through this statement, that it's not a book of it's a book of reckonings. So a bit about that.
I'm sorry, you must ask Rupa Publications for that because this is all their creative work, not mine.
Yeah. So I think maybe what they meant was that, when you get into a story, you don't exactly know what's going to happen. You set the plot, and very quickly something happens which just takes you aback. It's not a book of. They say that it's not a book of endings and book of reckonings. Maybe that's why. But they have also mentioned that these stories disturb, provoke, and linger on, which I must agree with, because some of the stories really lingered on. And one of those was the introduction story, Swansong. It's quite interesting how it kind of all starts. So tell us a bit about that story, without revealing the ending. थोड़ा सा ending मत बताइएगा, but
The
the theme of.
story actually started when I went with my friend to Tiger Point in Lonavala, and this was many years ago when there was no boundary wall, there was no fencing, and I stood there and I kept wondering what happens if somebody jumps and
Yeah.
somebody dies,
Yeah.
and that was the beginning of the story.
Uh-huh.
And if I reveal the end or the story, then there's no point in it.
Yeah.
But one of my pet themes is surrogacy because I worked with it when I was principal advisor in planning commission, and I had very strong views about it. So almost every collection has one story relating to that. So that was the outset, and I loved Lonavala. I thought it was a very quaint, beautiful town. So I wanted to set my story in Lonavala. So that's how that story came about. And somehow every story has a life of its own, and it goes on expanding on its own. The writer doesn't even plan. I planned to write a 5-page story. It turned out to be much longer.
Yeah.
That happened in the process of writing.
Yeah. We'll get to the length of things also, because that's so relevant right now with readers. And I was reading an article on LinkedIn also by a publisher who was talking about these attention spans and all. We talk about that, but Swan Song, and you know about surrogacy, what happens at the back end. And that's why this story was very interesting, and it, almost like a thriller, right? I mean, I love the treatment of it all. I love thrillers, so it was almost like a thriller, and even the opening sequence was so visual. I was like, oh my gosh, is this happening? How could someone do this? So, a bit about surrogacy. What's your opinion about this? Personal opinion. You must have kind of, experienced this in your workspace as well.
So we were there when this surrogacy bill was being discussed, and I had very, very strong views about it because at that point of time, even unmarried girls were allowed to be surrogates, and it was always said from the health ministry kind of that punya ka kaam hai. And I was saying we should not be in a position where women have to rent their womb in order to get money for the family. And I had my member, Dr. Sayyida Hamid, Minister of State rank, who believed in what I said, and we both advocated against it. We said there should be very stringent laws, and uh, not anybody should be allowed to go in for surrogacy because what was happening was women who were affluent said we want to have a second child or a third child, but we don't want to go through the progress of process of pregnancy. So
Right.
if you can get a surrogate for 50,000 rupees or 1 lakh rupees, why bother undergoing 9 months of
Right.
pregnancy?
Right.
I thought there was some place where we should contain all this. In any case, there are so many orphanages which have so many children. So if you need to have a child in your life, why can't you adopt the child
Yeah.
instead of going in for surrogacy?
Yeah. Awesome. I That's why I love the podcast so much, because you know the author's perspective while writing these stories, the author's politics in some way, the author's thoughts, and I love that you think like that, because it's kind of strange, right? It creates a disconnect. Even I have this a similar opinion that adoption is much better than kind of going through all this, and that is so it's good for society as well, and overall there are multiple things, of course, when we go deeper into the topic. But I think it's another story of have and have nots, right? It's just that some people can just afford to do this. So I'm glad that you stood up for not making this a regular sort of practice. I don't know what's the status right now, but
Now, unmarried girls are not allowed, and
okay.
foreigners are not allowed to go in for surrogacy in India, because what was happening is, I don't think, Rohan, you know that in Maharashtra, in two other states which I've forgotten now, uh, they used to put women into hostel kind of situation,
Oh.
monitor the intake of calories and food they ate, and as the fetus grew, if the fetus was growing very well, they were given financial rewards and incentives for that. And for 9 months, these women were away from their families, from their husbands and their children, because they were an incubation chamber for
Mm,
somebody else's child. Now,
mm,
if you are someone who can't have a child of your own, it's different. If you are doing it only for convenience, it is very wrong.
mm. Is the incubation chamber about this? Because I haven't
The
read
first
the novel.
story of incubation chamber, one of the stories is this: a woman being
Okay.
used as an incubation chamber just to have a
Right.
child.
Amazing, ma'am. Amazing. This is so like relevant right now because this is happening right now as well, and people have found ways to kind of break the sort of break laws in some ways, but at least there are laws, and I'm so happy that that is happening. So now I completely understand where the story comes from, and I would really encourage the readers to read it to get better sense of what's happening on ground with this regard. And in fact, it's relevant to me right now because it's almost dystopic. I was reading a dystopic fantasy fiction a couple of days back, the first chapter of it, and it is quite connected. Almost, if we encourage all this, it can become dystopia won't be far away if we encourage all this. Great. The second story, and I don't know if it is, I'm going in serial or not, but The Dark Knight, I think it's the second one. No? It's the second
It's
one.
the second story.
Yes, it's the second one. Another, and in fact, just before the podcast, we were, discussing this that some of my favorite stories are coinciding with it's going serially. So it's, ma'am said that, I put my favorite stories in the beginning also. So, yeah.
Rohan, when you send your book to a publisher, he reads the first five stories. You are supposed to send the first five stories, the best five. So I
Ah,
put the best five in the beginning so
yeah.
that he selects my manuscript and the
Yes.
others come later.
That's a pro tip, guys, to all the authors. Put your best stories out there. When you're sending that book pitch, send your best stories. Were these stories a part of this, like top three or top five? They asked for three or five?
They asked for five, so
Five.
my five stories, the stories I like best are the first five.
Oh,
So
yes,
it's
yes. Oh,
always there in all collections.
yes. So the Dark Knight, which was another favorite of mine because it is in the desert, and it is again it has a sense of thrill about it. It is a very unique story. First of all, you don't come across such stories usually. It could be easily adaptable to any short form or long form, even long form, because it has that kind of sense of dread again. So tell us a bit about that, The Dark Knight. It sounds very Batmanish, but is it about Batman or something else?
This is basically a story which is based on reality, to the extent that my elder son and his family had a accident in which they all survived. They were just lucky. The doctors said in New Jersey that they should have died. The seriousness of the accident was so bad. So the story takes off from there with a sort of, I imagine what would have happened in case somebody had died in the family and my son and my grandson went to take revenge. So
Yeah.
that was the beginning of the story, and I set it in the desert because I love Rajasthan.
Yeah.
It used to be my favorite state when I was working in Government of India, and I made any excuse whatsoever to travel to Rajasthan.
Yeah.
And Bikaner and Jaipur were absolutely lovely. I was the election observer for Barmer, and I just loved Barmer and Jaisalmer. So I wrote about the desert in this story. And I left. I think my end was very clear, but there are people who open it to interpretation saying, no, it is not definite. It is inconclusive. So it depends on you how you want to read the end
Yeah.
of the story.
I think that's a beautiful way to end when the reader starts kind of imagining what happened before and after, and I think that's I think the best short stories do that, and I think that one does that, and I believe that maybe an entire anthology of stories from the desert can happen if it's such a favorite of yours, because in the deserts and those regions, again, my favorite because I love the region as well. It's so amazing in terms of culture and history, and the Jaipur Lit Fest. It's so amazing. But I believe an anthology can come out like that, desert stories or something like that. It would be very interesting. Um, but this kind of touching upon the deeper aspect of that stories, not revealing too much though, that even if it was set somewhere else, when you kind of chance upon some a perpetrator who has committed a crime against someone, it's an interesting premise, right? It's amazing. What do you do? How do you deal with the situation? So yeah.
No, and I am not forgiving. I don't understand how people forgive even murderers. I have seen, I mean, when Sanjay and Geeta Chopra were murdered, and
Hmm.
Geeta Chopra was raped and murdered, I
Hmm.
think her parents, his mother, her mother said, I forgive Billaranga or something like that. I don't
Hmm.
know where that comes from. It's
Yeah.
very great. They are very magnanimous people.
Yeah.
I'm not like that. If
Yeah.
something like that happens to somebody in my family, I would want vengeance. I'm like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think that's you're right. I mean, it's the smallest thing. If something happens, a very small incident to our kids, we get so protective, right? And we react, and that's very natural. It's just how we are built. Humans are built. We are not here to kind of be kind all the time. There is a time and place to be kind. Then it's required. And if something like this happens, I mean, it comes out. The anger comes out. It's natural. And yeah, we have laws, but the other party has also broken a law. I completely understand where you're coming from, and it has happened time and again. And I don't know if we can forgive. I think we should have stricter laws around that and sort of deal with the perpetrators with an iron fist. That's required. I'm sure. Okay, another story, and what I love about short story, collections is that you experience so much. Like you're paying 250 odd bucks, like right, but you are experiencing so much more. You have so many stories to choose from. You can go to any page. It sets beautifully in the modern sort of contemporary reader's lifestyle, and which I love about short stories. Let's talk about that in fact first, and then go to the next story. um, what were your influences? Why short stories? You have written so many. Why did you get gravitate towards this? And what about you? What do you read, or what did you read growing up? Something about that.
I did not read short stories. I sort of grew up on what is called detective fiction.
Okay.
Agatha Christie, Perry Mason, Harold Robbins, this thing, P.D. James, Ruth Rendell, and Mary Higgins Clark, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. But why I write short stories is that I began writing seriously as a middle writer. So I wrote in Times of India, Hindustan Times, Indian Express, Statesman. and pioneer. And
Mhm.
the editors would always say not more than 500 to 550 words. If
Okay.
I sent a middle for 650 words, it would come back saying, please edit it to 550 words and resend.
Mhm.
Okay. So I got used to writing that and I published about 250 middles. So
Mhm.
when I started writing stories,
Mhm.
writing my first one was a novel, The Dance of Death. It took
Yeah.
me some time
Yeah.
and it was a very dark
Mhm.
this thing
Mhm.
novel.
Mhm.
After that, writing short stories was easier and graduating from 500 words to 2,500 words was easy. But
Okay.
writing 50,000 words, 55,000 words was very difficult. I still find it difficult to complete a novel. I have two half finished novels lying with me for years,
Yeah.
and I can't sit down and complete it. But I can write a short story in 1 day or 2 days. That is why I keep writing short stories. But the publishers have told me short stories have no market now. Please write a novel. So I'll try and complete my novels, the
I
unfinished
disagree.
novels.
I think they are confused a little bit because the article I mentioned earlier, I just read it and it mentioned that Gen Z behavior has changed to picking up these short stories. So I think even they are figuring out. They are not exactly pointed their finger on what the behavior is right now. Because on one hand, longer form YouTube videos are also working. People are watching long podcasts like 3 hour podcasts, 2.5 hour podcasts. They are also consuming the short content from those podcasts. They are reading novels also, Japanese fiction and all those Honjin murders and everything is so popular right now. And on the other hand, they're saying that short story ka market nahi hai. So I feel it's strange.
No, what they're saying in a way is correct. If you go to a bookstore or you go to the airport, you'll
Hmm.
pick up a novel. You won't
Okay.
pick up a collection of short stories. And that also from a author who's not that well known. So that is the reason they're saying send a novel, not
Okay.
a short story. So
Okay.
that is the reason. So I'll try
But
to write, but for me it is difficult. I don't know how people write 1 lakh words and 90,000 words. It comes to them so easily. I can't do it. I mean, Thomas Hardy wrote a book which was, I don't know, the Woodlanders or something, where for about 100 pages he described walking on a road and with
yes,
trees on both sides. Now,
yes,
that is an art. That's really an art.
yeah.
Because I would have written 5 sentences and it would have been over. So,
Absolutely. I think I don't know if people would kind of read those kind of stories right now because the people just want payoff very quickly now. I think it's things change a lot. I feel that when publishers say that there's a market for something, they are kind of saying it because they have seen something happening, but they don't sense what's coming. Nobody saw the what do you call these foreign translations and all these things are doing so well in India. Nobody saw that Indian translations will do so well across the board. They'll win Booker prizes. So I think it's going to change a lot. But uh, any inspiration, any particular stories which have kind of really stuck with you, where your writing style has also been influenced by those, maybe an Agatha Christie or something like that, or something which comes
see,
to mind.
I write very simply, and that's because all the authors I have read also write equally simply.
Yes. Yeah.
So you read a book where you don't have to consult a dictionary for every second word which has been put in.
Mm.
That's how I write, and that's how I used to write my middles. And people would say it's written in very simple English, but written very well. So
Yeah.
I think that is a compliment. And all the authors, it's not that I haven't read any great author. My favorite book happens to be Ayn Rand's Fountainhead.
Yeah.
People like Atlas Shrugged better. I like Fountainhead better. And that actually inspired me a great deal. The character of Howard Roark and whatever he said. I
Mm.
mean, there was a sentence which is, I think, at the back of the book also: man's ego is the fountainhead of all human progress.
Yes.
According to me, that was sort of my Bible. And somewhere his friend Peter Kittring tells him, what do you think of me? And he says, I don't. I think that's a fantastic response, and it's true. It's
Uh,
not that he's trying to belittle him.
Yeah.
He just doesn't think about him. So those were the things which actually guided me when I was young to
Yeah.
a great extent, you know. And one of the later books which I liked was this Remains of a Day
Yeah.
by, what is his name? The Japanese author, but it's a Booker Prize winning book.
Ishiguro.
Wonderful, Ishiguro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very nice book. So these are the kind of books which, but if you ask me to pick up a book, I would probably pick up something like, what do you say? Maybe a P.D. James or something. By the way, P.D. James is an author who wrote murder mysteries, and what was known about her was she never got a single rejection slip in her life.
Wow.
I thought that was something I wish I had. Can you write and every time you send it to the
Yeah.
publisher accepts your book. And
Yeah.
the books are fantastic. Now you have, I mean, I think they are beautifully written books.
Yep, amazing. And I think even in this one, there may be like 10 odd words in those 24 stories, which were like, okay, these words maybe not everyone would be able to comprehend, and that's a good thing because then you reach out to more people, and also simple writing doesn't distract you from the plot, and I love that. I prefer that because everybody can put in flowery words. I mean, it's the easier thing to do. I think so. But if it kind of comes to an author naturally, then it's fine. But
That's fine.
that's fine. But it kind of, I feel those authors get relegated to only certain kind of readers, and वो बहुत मतलब it becomes very niche.
I read Jhumpa Lahiri and she wrote simply and she wrote beautifully.
Yeah, yeah.
I read Anita Desai and she wrote simply and she wrote beautifully. So
These are the
that's the
best
kind
names.
of, and I had met Mahashweta Devi, but of
Okay.
course she wrote in Bengali and it was translated. I was her escort officer and she
Oh,
was a very
wonderful.
simple
Wonderful.
person and she wrote beautifully. So,
Amazing.
you know,
I think then it's something which is kind of uh, which is not relevant right now because if you want to sort of if you look at the best authors and they are doing it effectively, yeah, why not? Why not just keep it simple?
Vikas Swaroop is another person who writes simply and
Yeah.
writes beautifully because his
Yeah.
plots are so
Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. I think the plot is all that matters, and keeping the reader engaged. Because let's not forget that we are readers are competing. I mean, authors and publishers are competing with Netflix also at the same time. That you have to keep the kind of attention span going and keep it very engaging. So yeah, great. I was about to talk to you about this story, Amish Quilt, which was very came as a surprise to me because, of course, I have encountered this topic before in I think some Western movie or something like that. But I never imagined that an Indian author would, tackle this issue and storyline. Tell us a bit about this. And most of our listeners won't be aware about, this Amish culture and whatever. A little bit about that. What was your experience? Why did you pick this story up? And
my son was in Urbana, Champaign, studying in Urbana, Champaign. And when I was in Champaign, my daughter in law took me to the Amish country. And
okay.
I was totally fascinated. I had never seen horse-drawn carriages in US. And I've put in the year also, but it was actually before that, something around 2010 or 12 or 15.
Hmm.
And then I saw these little kiosks, these little shops. I've described a quilt, beautiful quilts, lovely handwork.
Hmm.
And then these women with these bonnets, they look like nuns,
Hmm.
and with wicker baskets in their hands. It was so different from the rest of US. So
Hmm.
I was totally fascinated and I was trying to take a photograph. Then my daughter in law said, no, no. She gave me a flyer and said, you're not supposed to invade into their privacy. And
Hmm.
then I came to know that they generate their own electricity, they make their own bread, everything. And I was told that they do not like to pay taxes to the government. I'm told that's not true for all Amish because they say we are doing everything ourselves. The
Yeah.
electricity is ours, we're getting our own water. Why should we pay the government?
Yeah.
Apparently, things have changed now.
Hmm.
But That was the Amish country. Whatever they made, the handicrafts they made, beautiful beds, carved things, they
Mm.
used to earn money from that. So I wanted to talk about the Amish people, and so therefore the story came out
Yeah,
like
it's
this.
it's very unique. So, did you have to think hard about kind of how to build the story because it might look kind of fabricated a bit because it's
It,
kind
it
of
is
so.
it is fabricated because it couldn't have happened. The story came on its own. I just had
Yeah.
to put myself into the Amish country and the quilt, and then the story came on its own.
Great, great. I think I was listening to a podcast or something, and the author said that I don't think too much when I'm writing. I just flow, and then I see what happens. After a couple of hours, I see. I go back to paper and kind of figure out what did I write. Is it like that sometimes with you? Or?
Yeah, so in fact, I wanted to say sometimes I have started with a story and I want to end it in one way, and
Hmm.
halfway through the story has a life of its own and it turns somewhere else and it ends differently. And I'm wondering, but this is not what I wanted to write. So what happened? I don't know. It's the
Hmm.
process of writing, and then the story has a life of its own.
Yeah.
Go somewhere else.
I think sometimes the best stories come out like that. You don't think too much, you don't think too technically, and it just flows and kind of comes
Yeah,
out.
but some of the stories in this collection, I actually changed the end because I had people, I gave them to read the story, and they said every story of yours ends sadly or it has that kind of ending. Why can't you have a happy end? So I changed the end with a
Okay.
couple of
Which one
stories.
was that? Because I've
Uh,
read also. Which one was that? Where you changed the end and kind of made it a bit.
I don't remember the name of the story. It's the one about Sikkim.
Oh, right,
Have,
right, right. Yes, yes,
uh,
yes. I know. Climb every mountain.
climb every mountain. It actually ended with
Mm.
Neha dying. I mean, sorry, Neha, your wife's name.
There's a
But
spoiler, guys.
so I wrote that and
Mm.
then I gave it to someone and said, why can't you ever have a happy ending? Why can't you let them live? So I said,
Yes.
okay. So I changed the end to please because I don't realize I'm comfortable with sad endings. I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with twists and
Yeah.
turns.
Yeah.
Not everybody is. I'm realizing it now.
That happens. I mean, it was a good change from all some of the other stories that because I figured that this girl is dying. I figured halfway through the story, I figured that something is going to go bad, and
Ah,
it
she was supposed to die. I wrote it like that. But then when somebody says why, so I said, okay, I'll have to make her come alive. So that's it.
maybe an alternate ending could be done. Maybe two chapters and alternate endings. That is also an option now.
Dying was more natural. She was supposed to die in
Yes,
the avalanche.
yes.
That's how it ended, actually. But then,
It would have connected to historical,
ah,
things as well.
obviously, her surviving was very chancy. But अब क्या करें? Sometimes you please
Get them
people.
off like Game of Thrones. Great. So yeah, it's that I was supposed to talk about that story, but it's kind of done. But it's a very interesting one. It's very different from what you have written in.
See, again, it's because I loved Sikkim. We
Ah,
went to Sikkim. I fell in love with Sikkim. That was in 2015, I think, just when I was retiring. My
hmm,
batchmate was the chief secretary, and I stayed in this lovely hotel about which I've described in the story.
hmm,
I went to all the places I've written about. I just fell in love with
yeah.
Sikkim. So the story had to be set in Sikkim because I wanted to describe Sikkim. So that was it.
Yeah. You have mentioned Uttarakhand also in that.
Uh,
In that, so I love that.
I just love the places I love, then I think I should write something about them.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I was just happy for the mention. We are from Dehradun, so the Char Dham Yatra was mentioned there, so I was very happy. So, a, an integral theme, and it came up in a lot of stories of yours of DNA, and the mystery around DNA testing and all of those things. Um, uh, why have you included those themes and why in fact in the first story also it's there, so tell us a bit about that.
See, actually, I got my DNA tested in US because my son said you must have your DNA tested and you'll know what diseases you are
Right.
likely to get when you're older, etc.
Right.
Then what happened? My son and everybody got their DNA tested. Then a few a couple of years later, my son got a email from somebody
Mhm.
saying that he got his DNA tested and he has found out that they are related. They are second cousins. So he
Okay.
says, "How are we related? Is my mother related to your father?" Because he didn't know the connection. This
Mm.
is, and when my son told me this, I just said, "What is this man's name?" And I said, "He's my first cousin." Now, the family's been distant for years. We've
Mm.
not been in touch. We
Mm.
don't know. He didn't know.
Mm.
And so then I said, "Just ask him what is his father's name. Is it so and so? Is
Yeah.
his mother's name this?" And
Yeah.
he said, "Yes." So I said, "Gaurav, you are my first cousin." And then the two families were united after so many years. And now we are very much in touch.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
somehow half his family lives in Bombay, so naturally we are in touch. The thing is, I realized that DNA can be such a great bonding
Mm.
and it can unite people also.
Yeah.
So DNA testing is something which is one of my favorite themes and it crops up in every book of mine, not
Yes.
once but twice and many times.
Ah,
That's how.
I think two, three times I remember while reading.
There are two, three stories which have DNA testing in it.
Yeah.
Father and son has DNA testing in it. This one has DNA
Yes.
testing. It's one of
Yes.
my pet themes, and many people have not got their DNA tested, so they are completely clueless about it.
Ah, yes. And it's awareness also at the same time that you can do something like that to figure out, what you really are, what is
In
your.
fact, this site 23andMe, they
Yeah.
regularly sent updates
Hmm.
saying this man has got this one, he's your third cousin, fourth cousin. So now we've given up. We are not interested in knowing in US कौन से cousins हमारे हैं, but they are obviously related.
Yeah.
If we ever trace the
Yeah.
line, we'll come to know how we are related. So
Yeah.
they do this matching and they keep informing both parties.
Wonderful. That's amazing. That's something new for me because wasn't aware that they can go to this depth to kind of figure out. I've only read about DNA testing in those, murder mysteries and whatever, all those things.
Paternity cases in India.
Yes, yes,
And for it is
yes,
terrible, and that is why many women go in for a divorce afterwards. If the husband insists on a
yes,
paternity test for the child,
yeah,
then she says, "Okay, fine, it's proven that you are the father. Now I don't want to have anything to do with you."
yeah, yeah. That happens. There was another one where you know there are childhood monsters, which
Yeah.
is quite interesting because it's a debate which has hit us time and again in India that how should these kids be dealt with the Nirbhaya case and even others. There's so many, right? So, what's
When
your opinion on that, and why did you write the story?
when we were in England in 1992-93 under Colombo Plan Fellowship in Birmingham,
Yeah.
this incident had actually taken place that two boys had picked up a boy from the shopping mall, taken him to the railway this thing tracks, and then pelted him with stones and killed him.
Oh
And
my.
then our first reaction was they'll get away with it
Hmm.
because they are 10-year-old, nothing will happen. But the UK law was different and they were imprisoned
Hmm.
because this was an adult crime and they had behaved like adults in killing a child.
Hmm.
So that had such a huge impact on us because we were over there and we kept thinking that poor boy, his photographs were splashed on the TV every day and we used to see it and we realized how dangerous it is.
Yeah.
Anybody can take away a child and kill him if they want.
Hmm.
That was the thing of the story,
Hmm.
reason behind the story.
Hmm.
And then I am associated at this moment with Prayas, an
Okay.
NGO which deals with children, child rights, and they have care homes.
Okay.
But my view is, and it has always been, I was the principal secretary, Women and Child Development and Planning Commission.
Okay.
But my view was always that you cannot take this view that children up till the age of 18 are innocent and
Hmm.
they should be treated as child. If you commit an adult crime, you
Hmm.
should be punished like an adult.
Yeah.
It happened in Nirbhaya's case, it happened before that.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you a very interesting case. In Maulana Azad, medical college, a young girl was raped. An MBBS student
Mm.
was raped near Delhi Gate,
Mm.
and the guy was caught and he claimed, I'm not 18 yet, so I'm a minor, so I cannot be imprisoned. I can be sent into a remand home, detention, whatever.
Mm.
The doctors tested him for, they do the test of the bone and they
Yeah.
said he's over 18. Whether he was over 18 or he was not over 18, I do not know. But the thing is, it was a lady doctor in the making who had been raped. She was traumatized completely,
Mm.
and the least the man deserved was a prison sentence.
Mm.
So I think, and I have very, very strong views about, this treating somebody as a child. I think anybody above 14, if they've committed a crime, should be treated as an
Yeah.
adult.
I think it's a question of mindset more, and age has nothing to do with it. I think, and if one needs to be reprimanded, it's as simple as that. Where do we stand right now, ma'am, with regard to that? What's the law exactly right now?
I am not very sure whether it is 16 or 14. I think 16. Anybody above 16, if you commit a
Yeah.
adult crime, you are treated as an adult.
Okay.
But I am POXO is there, which is very essential because you have the Prevention of Sexual Abuse to Children
Yeah.
Act. Because children are the ones who are actually the victim, male children and female children both. And I
Yeah.
have full sympathy for them. But that does not justify the other this
Yeah.
thing when children who are not adults and they commit a crime, they should also be punished. I am not a great believer in child rights per se without child duties.
Yeah.
You tell the parents and you tell all the advocates
Mm.
that what about duties of children, and they said no, duties nahi. The
Yeah.
child has rights. So that is not, I don't think that's
I
very
think
balanced.
duties are more important. I just noticed I was watching the new movie Turandar in theaters, and I noticed some parents they had taken their kids also, and it's an adult movie, and
Yeah.
those kids were watching the entire movie, and the parents are also to be blamed, right? I mean, they can't take it, and the theater allowed it. That's another beast in itself, because usually they don't. But I just posted this morning. I posted on social media that what the heck is happening, and what do you expect these kids to do out there in the world when they watch something like that?
It
So
was a very nice movie, but too violent even for adults. And
so
imagine,
imagine the kids were
imagine
watching.
children. No,
I think it was an 8 or 9 year old that was watching the movie,
no,
and they
because
came. Yeah,
it's dreadful the kind of impact it will have on them, and then the movie is a resounding success, which again I think the movie deserved. But the point is, it would justify whatever is shown in the movie as
yeah,
something which is acceptable.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
mean, these are things which one has to think about.
Yeah, it's. I mean, if you have made a movie, it's fine. It's for adults. The certification is adult, but one needs to make sure that kids don't enter. I mean, that's something which needs to be. We need to make sure. Another
But
point.
after some time, it will come on the Netflix or Prime Video. So in any case, the children can watch it at home. So that would be the logic.
That's another sort of issue, which it's. I think this topic itself deserves another book and another podcast, maybe, because this is such a big thing that's happening. Parenting is so. I mean, I would say tough also, right now, because one needs to monitor so many things. But yeah, thank you, ma'am. I loved most of the stories. I won't talk.
Tell me the ones you didn't like, and I'll tell
I
you why
I
they were written.
तो लास्ट में थोड़ी बहुत स्टोरीज थी ना आई थिंक because it is about the mindset of the reader also. So what happens is that if I'm someone who have lost a lot in my life, if I have lost many people of late, then what happens is that one kind of tries to stay away from stories which have something like lung cancer or whatever. I lost my parents to cancer, so I kind of I was sort of jolted because of that. I ran away from that story. That happens. It's a personal thing. It's not across the board.
No,
But
no, the lung cancer one which you was talking about, I did it only to create awareness
I know,
against
I know.
cigarette smoking. Basically, my
Absolutely.
husband had a heart attack at the age of 37 and a half,
Uh,
and he died at the age of 59.
uh,
And he had stopped smoking. but
Mm.
what is was damaged was damaged.
Yeah.
So my point is, people who take this casually should know about it. And
Absolutely, absolutely.
so
I agree
that
with
was
that.
the reason for
मैं
that.
तो ऑलरेडी अवेयर हूँ इसलिए मैं घबरा गया था मैं
That is all right. Then there was a story I wanted to tell you about. Uh, Again, I'm so bad with titles, about this memories of a happier time,
yes,
which
yes,
is
yes.
about this woman who I this happened to a neighbor of mine in Vasant Kunj, and
Hmm.
she came and narrated the whole story.
Hmm.
And she said, "This is how I woke up, and for 3 days I was almost in a coma, not in a coma, but she was not conscious. She was in a
And I
normal
loved this one.
consciousness."
I loved this
And
one.
says, "Wo gold kada mera, he took it away." And
Ah.
then I asked my brother, and he said, "This is Dhatura poisoning. It's very common, and beware, don't ever eat either prasad or." So the story was again
Anything
this.
in fact. Anything in fact.
So this is basically, a story was written to make everybody else aware, because you'll think, oh, an 18-year-old is giving me one fruity, so what's the harm in
Yes.
having it? But
Yes.
this really happened to my neighbor in Vasant Kunj, so I
No, this has
wanted
been
to.
happening a lot. I mean, in fact, I heard a couple of years back there was this story of couple of people entering an auto rickshaw and they offered something to the person who was already in there, and then she was found in a park or something. All her belongings were gone, and it's so common. It's not something which is not happening. It's so common. So I love that you have created awareness also with the stories, many of the stories, in fact. And there is, and the publisher has not highlighted that in the book, but book cover or whatever, but that is there. I assure you, readers, that you will be more aware after reading the books, reading the short stories. And thank you so much, ma'am, for talking to me and loved the entire experience. I have had a good time for 1 week, reading all the short stories. That's what I look for. I want to get entertained. I want to be more aware. I want to, of course, be jolted a little bit as well sometimes. And 24 stories. Kudos. Thank you so much for writing all those
Thank you
stories.
so much.
And
Thanks
love,
a lot.
and I'm hoping and guys, do buy the book from Amazon. You can also leave your review there, whatever you liked, whatever you didn't like. It helps the author kind of understand the reader better. In fact, मैम तो change भी कर देती है ending जब readers की सुनती है. So that's something which is very good for authors, and yeah, feel free. You can also send us feedback in the YouTube comments where this podcast will be launched. And yeah, looking forward to the new year, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, and have a great time during this festive season. And thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for talking to me on the Booknerds podcast.
Thank you.